Before I get started, I'd like to recognize some of the Lighthouse Digest staff. Kathy Finnegan over there. Kathy, raise your hand so everybody can see you. She's the assistant editor, my partner at Lighthouse Digest. Deborah Baldwin, where are you, Deborah? Deborah's over there, sitting down, taking pictures. She's our historian. Billy Kitchen, our staff photographer. I don't know where Billy's at. Behind you. Somewhere. Okay, and I'm Tim Harrison. And you already met Jim Sherman here and Stephen Sanfilippo, who have been very generous. They've been at all of our ceremonies, Lighthouse ceremonies, for the last 4 years, I guess, 5 years maybe, to do these things. So they show up, and we certainly appreciate it. And I have a bee here who just definitely doesn't want to leave me alone. No way. Okay. We also want to thank today the donors, people that have donated to this ceremony. And you'll notice in the bottom of the program, people's names are mentioned. Some of the people that made donations: Matthew Mace, Al Michon, who's sitting up here in the front, John and Becky Burnham, Keepers of Baker Island, Kathleen Finnegan, and of course there's a lot of other individuals who have made donations too. So we appreciate that. And we've got my copies of the Sunrise County book over there. It's Washington County Lighthouses, but you make a donation to our cause, you get a free book. Make sure you pick up a copy of Lighthouse Digest before you leave. And Descendants of the Keepers hang around at the end of the ceremony to be interviewed, if you'd like to be interviewed by one of the TV stations. We'd like to thank Fox 22 and ABC 7 for being here. They've been in a lot of our ceremonies. ABI TV, also Channel 5. So thanks you folks. We appreciate the TV coverage. Also want to thank the Maine Honor Guard, represented by the Air Force here today. They will do the flag folding and the gun volley at the end of the ceremony. And of course, we always thank the Coast Guard because they've been at every event we've ever done. Really honored the Coast Guard keepers of yesteryear. So today we're gathered here to honor the memory and legacy of 16 men who served our nation as lighthouse keepers in different eras of time, from as far back as 161 years ago, from 1853, all the way up to 60 years ago in 1956. Yet all of these men served with distinction and in many cases with great sacrifices in the service of our nation. And all of the men being honored here today had strong ties to Maine, and many had stronger ties here to Hancock County. The lighthouse keepers being honored today are Vinyl Beale, George S. Connors, Willis Dolliver, Thomas Frank Falkingham, Arthur E. Ginn, Paul J. Kessler, Rufus King, Vernie L. King, Amos B. Newman, Charles H. Newman, Marnell R. Newman, William J. Newman, Clifford M. Robbins, Fred M. Robbins, Howard P. Robbins, and William Stanley. You know, if we had a time machine we could actually see back in time, we might see some of these keepers reading newspapers or magazine articles that would reach them weeks and sometimes months late, where they would learn about the invention of the telephone, Custer's last stand at the Battle of Little Bighorn, the disputed 1876 presidential election that finally awarded Rutherford B. Hayes as the presidency, the invention of the light bulb. And then as we move that time machine forward, we see the introduction of the shortwave radios and regular radios where the news would reach these keepers much more swiftly. Well, most Americans seem to think of the job as a lighthouse keeper as a glamorous thing, and many people dream about living at a lighthouse and what a great idyllic life it was. I can assure you, if you read through the pages of time, that life at these remote lighthouses, where these men served and lived with their families in the days before electricity and modern communication, was far from it. But lighthouse keeping was a family affair. The wives and the children all had to pitch in to make sure everything at a lighthouse was in proper running order. The stories of the work and hardship of the wives have often been written about in the pages of Lighthouse Digest and numerous other books, but sometimes forgotten in time. Unfortunately, the wives don't get honored with markers, and they probably should. But looking back in history, it was the men and women, such as those who tended the lighthouses, that led to safe travel for commerce, that helped to rapidly build the United States into the super world power that we are today. There is no question about it. By 1923, the United States Lighthouse Service had developed the best system of aids to navigation in the world, and the U.S. Lighthouse Service had more employees in 1923 decentralized outside of Washington, D.C. than any other branch of our government. Among the most important of those employees were the lighthouse keepers. It was the people like these who we are honoring here today who also helped to safely guide the ships carrying many immigrants to our shores, people seeking a better way of life, people who built this nation into the home of the brave and the land of the free that we enjoy here today. For the last 25 years, Lighthouse Digest has been researching these keepers. We have a lot more to do, but we keep the work up. Over time, many of the memories have been lost. Photographs have disappeared or been forgotten about, or even government records of many lighthouse keepers have been destroyed or lost, making it difficult to piece together the many slices of our nation's lighthouse history. For example, although the descendants of William Stanley, who's being honored here today, still live on Monhegan Island, where he was a lighthouse keeper up until 1902, have been unable to find a photograph of him anywhere. However, we're proud to say that we have located, published, and saved many lighthouse keeper photos and memories, more so than any other organization in the nation, public or private. Such is the case with some of the keepers we are honoring here today, many whose stories will be told in future issues of Lighthouse Digest magazine. Such will be the case of lighthouse keeper Vinyl Beale, who actually we know quite a bit about, thanks mostly to a prize-winning essay titled The Life of a Lighthouse Keeper, written 100 years ago by his daughter Robina, known as Beanie. Some of the keepers we're honoring here today had lighthouses in their blood, and often followed in their father's footsteps, their grandfather's footsteps, uncles and cousins, and becoming lighthouse keepers. For example, in 1902, Charles Newman followed in his father Amos Newman's footsteps when he became a keeper at Mount Desert Rock Lighthouse, and finished his long career as the head keeper of Pumpkin Island Lighthouse. Marnell Newman's grandfather was the brother of a lighthouse keeper, Amos Newman, but young Marnell Newman's lighthouse career only lasted 3 years. He drowned in the waters near Saddleback Ledge Lighthouse when he was only 20 years old. And we have a lot of keepers we're going to be honoring around the cemetery today. We set up here at this particular spot mainly because Marnell's tombstone is right here. And he's the only lighthouse keeper we're honoring today who actually lost his life in the line of duty. Some keepers married the daughters of other lighthouse keepers. For example, before he became a lighthouse keeper, in 1853 at Mount Desert Rock Light, Rufus King married Margaret Ward, the daughter of Mount Desert Rock Lighthouse keeper Benjamin Ward, Jr. But Rufus King's lighthouse career was also cut short. It only lasted 6 years when he lost his leg and it had to be amputated, apparently at the lighthouse, for some type of infection. The only known photo of him is from a distance and shows him with his peg leg in front of the W.H. Ward Jr. store in Vansett, Maine. But so much more remains and hopefully awaits us, yet to be rediscovered, reported on, and saved for future generations. Today, tens of thousands of tourists flock to our lighthouses to visit them, to take photographs of them, and enjoy the magnificent scenery that surrounds them. And many of these people take boat tours and other excursions to visit even the most remote lighthouses offshore. Many plan their vacations around lighthouses. People fall in love at lighthouses. They get married at lighthouses. And even some people have their ashes scattered at lighthouses. However, many of these people fail to remember the lighthouses were built not as tourist attractions, but they were built for one purpose only: to save lives. And way too many people do not realize the sacrifices and hardships that were endured by the lighthouse keepers' families that once staffed and lived at our nation's lighthouses, all for the benefit of others. The true lighthouse keepers are no more. Gone is a way of life that can never again be replicated. Gone is the sound of laughter at the lighthouse keeper's children playing on the grounds. Gone are the ringing of the fog bells. Gone are the days of the keeper climbing the steps to light the wick in the beacon at night and turning it off at dawn. Gone are the days of polishing the brass, trimming the wicks, filling out the reports. Gone are the days of the lighthouse inspector, and gone are the days of the lighthouse tender delivering coal, oil, new lamps, and the traveling library to the families so they could read and learn at these remote light stations. It's all gone. Sadly, some of the lighthouses where the men we are honoring today are gone, or largely changed. A few examples are Crabtree Ledge Lighthouse is no more. The Keeper's House at Moose Peak Lighthouse was blown up in a demolition exercise. The Keeper's House at Deer Island Thoroughfare was destroyed in a fire. And all the buildings at Nash Island Lighthouse, with the exception of the tower, were burned to the ground. And only the lonely tower survives at Saddleback Ledge Lighthouse. But fortunately, most of the towers still stand. And some light stations, such as Bass Harbor Headlight, West Quoddy Headlight in Lubec, Portland Headlight in Cape Elizabeth, welcome visitors from all over the world. Most of the remaining towers and light stations that still send their light out to the Mariner at sea to this day are a true testament to the people who built them, to the lighthouse keepers and the families who staffed them. But without the shared memories of the people who once lived at our lighthouses and kept these lights burning, they are just cold, empty structures. That's why it's so important to keep these memories alive and honor these keepers with a historical marker here at these cemeteries, so that here at Mount Hope, all future generations who walk through here may never forget and will continue to share those memories with their children and others. I have often told others in my many lectures and presentations that one can learn more about early American history by studying lighthouses than any other single source. Additionally, there are more stories of bravery, hardship, tragedy associated with lighthouses than any other historic buildings in the United States of America. And the lighthouse keepers being here today, honored here today, each and every one of them experienced some of this in one way or another. One such case, as was already mentioned, is the rescue by lighthouse keeper Fred Robbins at Mount Desert Rock that has been told in numerous books. Then there's the story of Arthur again, who was lost in the fog on his way back to Mount Desert Rock. It was the constant ringing on the fog bell by his children that saved his life and brought him back to the island. Some of the lighthouse keepers being honored here today experienced short lives, dying young from the hardships associated with lighthouse life, while others had amazing careers after retiring from the lighthouse service, such as Clifford Robbins, who was a successful lobsterman and longtime harbor master in Southwest Harbor, who also later fought for the preservation of Bass Harbor Headlight and Baker Island Lighthouse. But all of them were proud of their time as lighthouse keepers, with one such example clearly shown at the family plot of lighthouse keeper Paul Kessler, who we're going to be honoring here today, where you will see a large stone marker with a beautiful color image of Maine's red and white striped West Quoddy headlight engraved on the stone. It's here at the entrance to the cemetery on the other side. But all of these men have passed. There will be no more first-hand stories. None will ever be told again. And a way of life that can never be replicated is gone forever. Remember that. But we must always remember that. It is often said that a person dies twice. Once with their final breath, and later, the last time their name is said. We must never allow that to happen. So today, we again say their names. Final O. Beale, George S. Connors, Willis Dolliver, Thomas Frank Falkingham, Arthur E. Ginn, Paul J. Kessler, Rufus King, Vernie L. King, Amos B. Newman, Charles H. Newman, Marnell R. Newman, William J. Newman, Clifford M. Robbins, Howard P. Robbins, and William Stanley. Let us always remember these names. Let us always remember these lighthouse keepers and the legacy that they left for us today and all future generations. When it comes to lighthouses and lighthouse keepers and their families, we could easily borrow a World War II quote from Winston Churchill and apply it to lighthouses when we state, "Never have so many owed so much to so few." And today, as we close this ceremony that honors those who came before us, may we ask that God continue to bless and watch over our great nation, the many volunteers who now care for our lighthouses from coast to coast, and the men and women of the United States Coast Guard who now manage our nation's waterways and protect our coastline for the benefit and the safety of all. Thank you.